Hello and welcome to the TMC Newsroom. My name is Rich Tehrani. Thanks for watching us today. We are at Interrupt New York 2011 at the Jacob Javits Center, and on our program today, John Humphreys, the VP of Marketing at Egenera. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's my second day of interviews, and I'm learning lots about mobility, the cloud, virtualization, WAN optimization, ADCs, you name it, I'm learning about it.
Good.
It's all good stuff. So I was hoping you could start at the top. Tell me a little bit about your company.
Yeah, so Egenera is an infrastructure management software vendor, really focused on providing high availability, reliability to cloud and to mission critical and business critical applications. So we spend a lot of our time, I don't know if you've seen recently, there's been a lot of outages in the cloud.
Absolutely.
So whether that's Target, whether that's Amazon Web Services.
We had Amazon, and we had some websites go down too, right? We had Apple,
Bank of America this past weekend.
Right. They just put out an announcement today saying what the problem was.
Exactly. So what I think the typical belief has been with cloud is that with a combination of virtualization from vendors like VMware and scale, meaning just a lot of infrastructure out there, companies can design reliability into their cloud environments. And I think what we're seeing over the last few weeks and months is, in fact, no, even with virtualization and even with massive scale, there needs to be kind of that safety net, right? And that's what Egenera does. We provide kind of infrastructure management down at the hardware level, down at the network level, that allows people to provision and add horsepower to the applications or the business services that make up their cloud environment.
So by horsepower, do you mean bandwidth? Do you mean CPU, disk space? What is horsepower?
What we mean is CPU and network bandwidth. So really we focus on managing the network identities, the MAC addresses, the worldwide names, as well as the CPUs. So we take advantage of all of that blade server technologies that's out there, and we provision that stateless compute capacity. So think of it as just memory and CPU combined with the network identity. And we can take that, let's call it just kind of a fabric, a data center fabric, and we can assign those stateless compute resources and all of those stateless network identities to any application and provision any application within minutes, right? And so what that does is if you have a spike in demand, for example, for your website, and you start running out short of capacity to serve that demand, the classic Target example that we saw a few weeks ago, we have the ability to quickly and easily add more horsepower, more capacity to that web environment.
It sounds kind of, is it like a hypervisor but spread across multiple computers?
We actually
like
work
a middleware
well with hypervisors.
But it's almost like a middleware layer, something like a Google would have built into their systems.
It's very low level. It's down at the hardware level, right? And the whole point here is to be able to harness that horsepower, that CPU and that network, and apply it and focus it to the different services that make up your cloud environment.
So architecturally, where does this live within the network? So if I'm going into the cloud, do I buy a cloud based on your technology, or do I use my existing cloud and then your technology goes on to the computers?
So it lives outside of that cloud, and then we have a kind of a little bit of software that sits in the cloud itself, right? It allows us to create those domains, but then you manage those domains. It just sits on a server, a management server that
so there's a
plugs
management
into your
server
cloud
here, and then you have a cloud here,
right? And
so
it plugs into your cloud, and
it manages what's happening here, and it helps you scale, and it helps you with all those kinds of challenges that companies are going to have, peak usage and things like that.
Yeah, let me give you another example. So where you mentioned hypervisors. You mentioned when you think of hypervisors, of course you think of VMware. So one of the things you have with VMware is this whole concept of a cluster or a resource pool. And that cluster or that resource pool might be made up of 5, 6, 10, 20 servers. And as and maybe let's call it 20 servers for the sake of argument. And as time goes on, you have what most organizations have, which is typical VMware sprawl, right, or VM sprawl. People add more and more VMs because it's simple, it's easy, and it essentially comes at no cost. And then at some point, your cluster or your resource pool reaches max capacity. Or maybe you have a failure of one of those nodes within the resource pool. What we do is we detect that failure in real time, and we replace that node with another VMware node that we instantly provision.
Now, but what happens with the data that's on there at the moment? So you can have like a possible crash
you might have 20 VMs that are, or 10 VMs that are running on that node, right? And those go out, What they'll do is VMware will restart those on other nodes elsewhere in the infrastructure, but they can't replace that capacity. So we replace that capacity, then we'll let VMware know through their virtual center interface that that capacity is back, and they can use that to rebalance node back, VMs back onto that node.
So competitively, who are you typically dealing with?
Yeah, competitively we see ourselves competing a lot with Cisco, with their UCS. So the difference between Egenera and Cisco with UCS is really they are kind of the entire stack, right? They require the customer purchase their hardware. Right. Whereas we are focused on meeting the customers where they are with the servers that they have. So we're certified on Fujitsu, we're certified on Dell, and most recently we've become certified on HP. We'll also, through the rest of 2011, we'll be adding a couple more platforms. So by the end of 2011, we'll really have a full complement of server vendor hardware that we're certified on. Now we're basically open. So we allow the customer to have that choice of hardware, the platform that they want.
Understood. And it makes sense if you're competing against Cisco. That's a logical way of attacking the market. If you look at your customer base, are you dealing more with Fortune class companies, or is it .coms, or a combination?
It's a combination. Our sweet spot is a kind of a mid-sized to large organization, maybe a couple hundred servers to a couple thousand servers in their data center. They are financial services, they're healthcare, they're government, and they're service providers, really, largely, right? These are people that value reliability and value uptime. In addition, one of the other benefits of the software is that it dramatically reduces the complexity of your hardware or your infrastructure. So most of our customers talk about the number of components as a measure of complexity. And kind of before and after Egenera, the number of components typically reduces by somewhere around 80 to 85%. So, it's a dramatic reduction in the amount of infrastructure and the amount of connections, which in and of itself reduces costs, but it also helps to increase that reliability. And then we bring our special automation and service level automation sauce on top of that.
Now you mentioned that one of the gauges of whether the customers are in your sweet spot is a number of servers in their data center, but does that mean that how many they would have in the cloud, or I was just trying to gauge that?
No, because it really talks about their level of complexity for the overall organization, right? Cloud is just an emerging area where we're starting to see a lot of traction and a lot of interest because of some of the very visible and recent failures within cloud services. People recognizing that, when they're approaching cloud and they're making this transition from whether it's a web architecture or kind of a virtual architecture into cloud, they really need to start to be thinking about how they can design reliability at all levels of that cloud stack, right? And that includes the hardware stack. And I think that's kind of been a missing piece for a lot of organizations up till now.
Okay, we just have a couple seconds. What's next for the company?
What's next? I really think it's about, kind of finishing our complement of choice for the customer, as well as adding some serious capabilities in terms of the services on which we deliver, right? The automation services that we deliver on top of the PAN Manager platform.
Excellent. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.